What's up, snappers? Welcome back to the channel. Drewski here. Today we're gonna be looking at the brand new card, Nightmare, to see if he's worth their precious resources. We're gonna be looking at his key, Synergies Counters, and some decks that I brewed for him. But wait, before we do that, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. I do weekly reviews of the brand new card in Marvel Snap, so if you don't want to miss out, hit that notification bell right now. And let's get back into it. Pardon the interruption, but I'm running a giveaway on YouTube for the PAX Bundle. So make sure to follow the instructions in the description to enter in, and good luck to everyone that's entering in the giveaway. Now the question is, who is Nightmare? Let's take a look. So Nightmare in Marvel Snap is a 3-cost, -1 power card with the on reveal ability of replace the text of each card in your hand with the text from a random card of the same cost. So I believe this card will be a menace to Marvel Snap. Your opponent will not know what you're going to be running, especially with the cards that you replace their abilities with. Most decks in Marvel Snap, you're going to know what they're going to be playing. It's going to be very tricky, just like Airsham, to be facing a Nightmare style list. So if you like that type of RNG or surprise factor in Marvel Snap, then this is definitely your card. Replacing bad ability cards with potentially good ones, the ceiling is insane for Nightmare. Your opponent is going to be super confused on what you're going to be running, and you can cause some crazy chaos with this style of deck. Now let's take a look at the pros and cons of Nightmare. So the first pro that I want to talk about is that it gives bad cards a chance to play safely. For example, you have Ebony Maw, you can replace his ability first and then potentially play him on the later turns to surprise your opponent. Another pro about him is that it affects your hand, thus giving you more control. It doesn't affect your deck like a lot of cards in Marvel Snap, so having the agency of knowing which cards you can replace in your hand, very, very good. Another pro about him is that it's the same cost, so you know what's possible. So obviously it really depends on your knowledge with Marvel Snap. If you know certain cards and their abilities, if you have a potential card that you want to change, then you could kind of have a little bit of a ballpark on what is possible to replace. So now let's talk about the cons. Very heavy RNG factor. It really depends if you can get that really high roll of getting, for example, like NightBrand, getting a ability from the Brood, or getting some broodlings. Some 3/10 broodlings would be crazy, but unfortunately I would say that's not going to be the case for most of the time for Nightmare. Another con about him is that it affects the entire hand. It really depends on your hand draw, especially if you have cards that you don't want to replace their ability, then you might be straight out of luck. Just like I mentioned, you might have cards in your hand that you didn't want to change. For example, if you have like Surge in your hand, you definitely don't want to replace their ability. So it really depends on when you can draw or play Nightmare. It's very situational on what's in your hand. Now let's take a look at the key synergies and counters for Nightmare. So the first synergy that I want to talk about is Red Skull. Of course, if you can remove Red Skull's really bad ability and replace it with a better one with Nightmare, tremendous value. Zero is another synergy with Nightmare. Of course, the synergy is not directly a synergy, but I'm saying is that Zero, with that type of shell, he's a very good staple with Nightmare, potentially if you want to disable a certain effect. And then of course you can always replace their abilities later with Nightmare potentially. So it's more of like he's a complementary piece with Nightmare. NightBrand is another great synergy with Nightmare. Imagine if you replace NightBrand, just like I mentioned, with Broodling's ability, being 3/10s is going to be crazy. So a lot of crazy potential with NightBrand, especially with that really bad effect that you can replace with Nightmare. Now let's talk about the counters. Of course, Cosmo is a counter for Nightmare. Nightmare is an on reveal, so Cosmo will stop that. Mirage and White Queen are examples of cards that can copy your potential Nightmare hit cards. So for example, if you run Nightmare, you have something good in your hand, then your opponent can steal it essentially with Mirage or White Queen. So you definitely want to be careful of those two cards. Now let's take a look at the decks that I brewed. I think they're pretty fun and competitive. Let's take a look. So the first deck that we have is called NightMachine. So this is my homebrew deck that I believe will work well with Nightmare. The goal of this deck is to throw down as much big powered static cards, potentially replacing their abilities with Nightmare, and even giving the flexibility of playing War Machine to place certain cards like Ebony Maw and Infinite. With Nightmare being in this list, you want to aim at cards like Hydra Bob, Ebony Maw, Maximus, Cold Obsidian, Red Skull, and Infinite. You could use Nightmare to replace their abilities and play them at a better rate. Zero is a great card to remove the abilities from cards like Hydra Bob, Ebony Maw, Titania, Maximus, Whole Obsidian, even Red Skull. Hydra Bob and Titania and Ebony Maw are just good static cards with their power. Replacing their abilities should be totally fine. And then you could use Zero, Hydra Bob, Titania, Ebony Maw the late turns with Black Swan. Maximus is here for his stats. If you can replace his ability with Nightmare, even better. Cosmo is really here to protect our big powered cards like Cold Obsidian, Red Skull, and Infinite. And then obviously you could use Cosmo to counter your opponent as well. War Machine is here for Ebony Maw and Infinite, just in case if you don't replace their abilities, you can run War Machine. Cold Obsidian is here for his power. You definitely have a lot of one-cost cards in this list, so you should be able to play Cold Obsidian even without Nightmare. Red Skull is our 5-cost power play card here. If you can't replace his ability with Nightmare, they can always zero that Red Skull. And then Infinite is here, obviously just for his stats. Potentially you replace his ability with Nightmare, but you could use Zero or War Machine to negate the Infinite's bad ability. Now let's take a look at my second list. Now this list is called Pixie's Nightmare. I believe Nightmare will work well with this list, giving more chaos with this control style of list. Nico is here because she's a 1-cost card and she brings tremendous value with her spells. Hydra Bob and Titania, like I mentioned in the previous list, is here just for their power and potential high roll with the Pixie if you can replace the cost with one of the big cost cards here in this list. Pixie in this list is to cause even more chaos by replacing the cost with some of the cards in your list. So hopefully you can get that really big high roll. So the main cards you want to target with Nightmare are Hydra Bob, Titania, and Gladiator. Mobius is one of the best tech cards in the game, especially teching against your opponents, and the interaction with Pixie, reducing their cost back. If you get a low cost card with a high cost, then you can reduce it back. Gladiator is a great pairing with Nightmare, replacing his ability, or you could hide him behind Aliath. Enchantress is here for her tech ability against ongoing cards or for her stat line with being a 6-powered card. If you replace her ability, should be totally okay too. Supergiant is here to really throw off your opponent. More than likely, you should be able to get Pariah with this list, and you could pair up with Alioth. Running Alioth after Supergiant is crazy with those unrevealed cards. Cersei's to add even more chaoticness to this list, especially replacing the cards that are in that lane, so it adds more chaoticness to this fun deck. Alioth is a great finisher in this list, especially if you have priority going into the later turns. Then you could run Alioth following up Supergiant or any of the lanes that you want to win that lane. Magneto is here to throw off your opponent as a last minute finish. If they have 3 or 4 cost cards, then you can really throw them off by moving them. Now let's take a look at my third and final list. Now this list is called NightBrand. I believe Nightmare will work well with the Starbrand style of list. I believe that there's a reason why they changed Sauron's ability and his stats, so Nightmare can work well with Sauron. So the cards that you want to aim with Nightmare are Ebony Maw, Starbrand, Typhoid Mary, and Red Skull. Zabu is just a must-have when you have multiple 4-cost cards like Ares, Enchantress, or Typhoid Mary, so Zabu will get value here. Sauron is great in this style of list, removing the abilities of the cards in your deck and then potentially replacing their abilities with Nightmare. With Zero in this list, you definitely want to use Zero with Ebony Maw, Starbrand, Typhoid Mary, or Red Skull. Surge is here to just give us a better curve just in case if we don't draw the Zabu or being able to play the Zabu. So Surge will definitely help with that. Armor is here to protect one of your big powered lanes, so definitely use Armor for the lane that you want to dominate with power. Starbrand, like I mentioned, is a great pairing with Nightmare or Zero. With Ares being this list, more than likely you should be able to get his ability to go off because there's so much power in this deck. Enchantress is here if you can't pull off the Zero or Nightmare play. You could use Enchantress to remove the abilities of Typhoid Mary and Red Skull. Typhoid Mary is a prime target to replace her ability, or you could use Zero to remove her ability. Red Skull is the same situation as Typhoid, is just raw power if you could replace his ability or Zero it. Now let's take a look at the snap pack that are featuring Nightmare. So Nightmare is with Esme Cuckoo, Morgan Le Fay, the Ancient One, and Dormammu. Esme Cuckoo, Morgan Le Fay, the Ancient One are already out, and then Nightmare June 17th and Dormammu June 24th. So I believe Esme Cuckoo, I would say, is not a must-have. If you like that flavor of card, then totally go get her, but I don't think she's a must-have card. Morgan Le Fay, she's definitely very situational. She's kind of hit or miss right now in the current meta. I would say if you like that style of destroying or discarding cards, then definitely you should pick her up. But other than that, I don't think she's a must-have at the current moment. The ancient one, I would say I was probably off on this card. The cost of the spell is very heavy for being a 3-cost card, the Tal Mandala spell. So I would say right now in the current iteration, I don't think she's a must-have. Hopefully in the future she might get buffed, but I would say she's definitely a skip for now. And then Dormammu, I will obviously review in the future. So it really depends if you like the flavor of Nightmare. If you want to take that chance, you do have potential of getting these cards or the previous season like Surge, Prodigy, Elixir, or Zorn. So remember guys to have 5k tokens before opening the seasonal series 5 pack to potentially get Nightmare. Now let's take a look at the community predictions for Nightmare. So they said S tier 20%, A tier 51%, B tier 21%, and C tier 8%. So the community overall believes that Nightmare is going to be an A tier card. So here's a community review from Juthrone. Thank you again for your response. They said, A tier for me. Will make Sauron decks insane, definitely justifying the cost and power nerfs. Other decks will either profit or suffer from the randomness. Nonetheless, this will be chaotic and fun. So I agree with this statement 100%. Of course, Sauron decks are going to thrive with this card. Having bad ongoing abilities or just abilities in general, I think will work well with this card. Of course, the randomness is brutal. It really depends on how lucky you are in Marvel Snap. And of course, chaoticness and fun is definitely the nature of this card. So thank you guys again for your feedback. If you want to be featured in the next video, make sure to follow my community posts about the brand new card in Marvel Snap. And thank you guys again for your responses. Now let's take a look at my star ratings for Nightmare. So for competitive, I gave him a 3 stars. Of course, this card is very heavy on RNG. RNG cards typically don't do super well in Marvel Snap. Of course, it's very fun. Like I mentioned, 5 stars is mad fun of a card. I would say on the competitive side, I would say it really depends on how lucky you are, really. For flexibility, give him a 3 stars. It really depends on the cards that you surround him with or how many cards you want to benefit off of his ability. So you're not going to be really partnering up with a lot of cards that have a lot of value or good abilities. You definitely want to surround him with bad abilities. And I would say there are more good ability cards than bad ability cards in Marvel Snap. For future changes, I gave him a 2 stars. Potentially, he might get adjusted in the future, but they already nerfed him before he released. So I would say for now he's safe, but again, it really depends on how chaotic this card will be. If it's very good, I would say it's definitely going to get a nerf. I potentially would say it's not going to get buffed. I would say his ability definitely is a high ceiling, but very low floor. Now let's take a look at my final review of Nightmare. Is worth the sniper skip? Let's take a look. So I'm going to be changing the format a little bit of this particular part of the video. Instead of using star ratings for 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 to 5 owners, I'm going to be saying just a general statement of which cards you're going to be missing or potentially the ones that you need to have to work well with Nightmare. So for series 1 to 2 owners, I'm going to say you're going to be missing a lot of cards that work well with Nightmare. So if you're in this range, definitely skip on Nightmare. If you are series 3 owners, you're going to be missing some of the cards that work well with him. The 4 and 5 definitely make him a lot better. So definitely, it really depends on your judgment on if you want to utilize his ability or not. For series 4 and 5 owners, you're going to be having majority of the cards. So I would say it's a safe bet if you're planning on getting him. My overall rating for Nightmare is a 4 out of 5 stars. And with that being said, I would say Nightmare is a snap. I would say this card is definitely more on the fun side of Marvel Snap. If you like the more competitive nature or more reliable cards, then definitely skip on Nightmare. But I would say his ceiling is definitely worth picking up because replacing bad ability cards and making them viable. I'm just going to throw this out there that Nightmare might have the potential to be the next Airsham style card. You're going to be throwing off your opponent pretty heavy. Your opponent's not going to know exactly what abilities you got. So definitely can throw off your opponent and maybe potentially get some infinity frames out of Nightmare. I believe Nightmare is going to be super fun and super chaotic, so I think he's definitely worth picking up. So let me know your thoughts on Nightmare. Am I completely wrong? Did I miss any synergies? Did I miss any decks that it works well with? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, please give it a like. Please subscribe to the channel. I would love for you to be a part of this amazing community here on YouTube. And I'll see you guys in the next Snapper Skip. Happy snapping.